So the CGSC Foundation, which was established in 2005, exists to support the U.S. Army Command and General Staff College at Fort Leavenworth. As we enter our 20th anniversary, we are proud to continue our work to enhance the college's programs, students, faculty, and families in ways that are not funded by the government. With us tonight, a couple of people at our head table is honor and welcome General Robert Brown and our foundation's chairman, Major General retired Christopher Hughes, who will formally introduce General Brown later in the program. Additionally, we are deeply grateful to the sponsors who make events like this possible. Their support allows the foundation to enhance the educational experience at Fort Leavenworth and prepare future senior officers to become ethical military leaders. So tonight's sponsors are the Tim and Karen Carlin Foundation, the Pritzker, yep, thank you Tim and Karen, the Pritzker Military Foundation, Colonel retired Bill and Marge Eckert, Mr. Peter Gademeyer, University of St. Mary, the Kansas City chapter, AUSA, and the Henry Leavenworth chapter, AUSA. I want to thank you all for their generosity, so thank you all. So it is an honor to serve as president and CEO of the CGSC Foundation. Our mission is to provide that margin of excellence for programs and activities of the Command and General Staff College where government funds can't be used. Our focus areas are scholarship, outreach, and soldier and family support. Tonight's event is an outreach opportunity, and we're bringing a taste of Fort Leavenworth to the public. I encourage you to learn more about our programs by speaking with our trustees and considering support for our mission. To contribute, please scan the QR codes on the back of your programs and to learn more about what we do. Now, it is my pleasure to welcome our chairman, Major General retired Christopher Hughes, and he'll introduce our guest speaker.
I didn't go into a full dialogue.
Thank you. You know, these events are exhausting, and I've almost lost my voice, so I've had to drive down from Red Oak, Iowa 2 nights in a row to have dinner. I'm not even sure who the guest is, to be honest with you. But, you know, General Colin Powell was a friend of mine, and I really liked General Powell a lot. What? Who? Oh. I'm sorry, our guest speaker tonight is Bob Brown. He appears to have been somebody important in the Army. Did some really cool stuff. There's a brochure if you want to read it. In all seriousness, though, so you might as well sit down. So, I do want to tell a quick story because, you know, one of the cool things I get to do in this job is to recognize those officers who changed my life. You know, it's always great when you finally get into a position, whether it's the university here when you can invite the guest speakers, or whether you're in command and you get to bring out graybeards and mentors, people who really made a difference in your life, and those of your soldiers. Very few have I brought that even come close to this gentleman here. And I want to give you an example of what I was telling the students today. This is why I lost my voice. It is an absolute privilege to come down and talk to our students. And for those of you who aren't really aware of who we have here, you basically have the best and the brightest of all the services, the interagency, and foreign nations, international students that come here right in your backyard and go off to command armies and air forces and navies and also run nations. We have heads of state that gone to school here, and they're very proud of it around the world. We get the best and brightest. And a lot of your community members in Kansas City sponsor them. So when I was talking to the students today, I was talking to them about 2 scientists called Denning and Kruger. And the reason I was talking to them was because in 1986, a gentleman decided to walk into a bank in Texas, and he pulled out a pistol out of his pocket, very ill prepared, and held up the teller. And the teller slid him all the money. He stuck the money in his pockets because he didn't have a bag. And he put the pistol back in his jacket and he walked out the front door. He took a right. He went down 2 blocks. He took a left. Halfway down the block, he walked into a second bank and he held up that bank. And when he walked out of the bank, the police were waiting for him. They caught him, arrested him, returned the money. The police asked him what he thought he was doing, and he said, "I don't understand how you caught me because I was invisible." And when the police questioned him about being invisible, he said, "How could you possibly think you're invisible?" He said, my second grade son came home from school today, and he showed me how to put my finger on a lemon and write on a piece of paper, and it was invisible. And when you heated it up, you could see what you wrote. So I made the assumption that if I put lemon juice on my face, I would make my face invisible. Now, 2 scientists actually studied this in great detail. And when they were done, what they found out is that humans, naturally, when they get one piece of information, they believe that piece of information is true. And they have a high degree of confidence in that information until somebody comes along and explains to them that they're not correct, or takes the time to mentor them and say, "No, you're wrong, let me explain that to you." And what happens is your confidence as that individual drops down to ignorance until a mentor grabs you and takes you on that journey of growth. General Brown is that person for me. We met in Haiti in 1994, and he popped my bubble and made me realize I was not as smart as I thought I was, but he gave me a little bit of growth. Years later, he was my assignments officer, and I was upset that I wasn't going to go to Italy, my assignment as a major. And he popped my bubble and he said, "No, you're going to go to Hawaii." And so he sent me to Hawaii. Later, he would be my boss here at the Commandant General Staff College as a CAT commander. And when I didn't make 1 star or 2 star the first time, he popped my bubble and said, "Well, maybe you're not ready yet. Let's work on that together." And took me on that journey. And then later at USARPAC in Hawaii, where he was the commander, a 4-star commander in charge of all U.S. Army forces in the Pacific, and was working with the Chinese and keeping the Russians at bay and helping the Japanese to build their military and create a thing called Pacific Pathways, which I hope he speaks about tonight. He then said, "Help me get set up in Hawaii." I did. He moved to Hawaii, and then he called me and said, "And I'm going to let you go command United States Army Cadet Command, your dream job." So this gentleman has popped my bubble of ignorance many times and pulled me along that journey of mentorship to turn me into the officer I am today. Today I'm retired. I have 5 businesses, and I live in Red Oak, Iowa, and I get to have the privilege of being the chairman of this incredible organization that gives me a chance to give back to the students. So without further ado, let me introduce General Bob Brown. I don't know what that was.
So that ranks as the longest introduction I've ever had. But thank you, Chris. I'm honored. I really want to thank CGSC Foundation for all they do. Unbelievable. And Laura, you're doing an amazing job. Chris, mediocre, you know. Yeah. Laura, amazing. No, I'm just kidding. Thanks for what you're doing. Chris, he's a busy guy, and so it's a way to give back. And it's so important. And I thank the folks here from Kansas City. I will tell you, I've been all over the world in 38 years stationed, and nowhere, I'm not just saying that this because I'm here, nowhere has the support from a community been better than Kansas City. Yeah, unbelievable. You take the time to get to know, and it's a problem in our country, getting to know our military. It's less than 1% serve, and it's actually kind of become a family business. You look, and my oldest daughter's a lieutenant colonel. My middle daughter's married to a lieutenant colonel. You could go around and ask 100 military, what family they have serving. They're all going to have family serving. But so in one way, that's good. You're kind of proud because they follow you. The other way, that's bad, because you create kind of like a warrior class, and that's not good, because it's easy to send people to war when you don't have skin in the game, and it needs to be America understands their military, We want to avoid war is the number one priority completely, deter, nobody would be stupid enough to attack us. And so I appreciate, though, Kansas City, you take the time, a table over here, bankers, pretty awesome, you know, and you're here to understand, and, you know, the folks to understand a little bit more about the military. And you have, I'm going to tell you today, I had the privilege of speaking at Command General Staff College and with the School of Advanced Military Study, and those students are here. Stand up, all of you, stand up if you would. The CGSC students in the sand. It makes me feel very good about our future. It's a tough world, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that here tonight. It's a difficult time in the world. But with young men and women as talented as they are, I go back feeling very good about the future. And so, you know, it just makes you feel really good. And CGSC Foundation, you know, explaining that, and there's a lot that can't be done because you might say, well, there's a huge budget, you know, with the military, and there is, but there's, you know, things like the medical, very expensive, personnel pay very expensive. The first time in 50 years revamping the Army, very expensive, and so you get down to it, and there's not the money to do a lot of things you want to do to help with the learning and growth of talented individuals like this. So thank you, you know, for your support, for being here. Hey, can I have the Vietnam veterans please stand? Our Vietnam veterans please stand. Thank you. Thank you very much. Unbelievable what they went through. I was as a cadet, I had a Vietnam veteran who was a prisoner of war, was one of my instructors, and it's amazing what you all went through. No war is a good war, but then to come back and the way you were treated is shameful. Yet, every memorial I went to in 20 years, and every service, sadly, that I had to do for when we lost a soldier, the first people there were Vietnam veterans there, and I would always thank them and say, you know, you weren't treated like this, and yet you're here. And they said, we knew it was wrong, and we never want to see it again. Nobody should go through that again. We are grateful for your service, and it's terrible the way you were treated, and we can never thank you enough for doing enough for you. So thank you for your service to our country. And it's, you know, it's an example from the young folks to the amazing veterans. People make our military the greatest in the world. It's the people. And this is a really important year. It's the 250th anniversary of the birth of the Army. We had an Army a year before we had a nation. And most people don't know that. I guarantee you, go out and ask Americans, they would have no idea. And so you could say we have a nation because of the Army and the sacrifices. Absolutely amazing. And we're celebrating 250 this year, and it's, you know, June 14, 1775, and it's really the selfless service to a cause greater than self that started way back then. And people come in for all different reasons, the military. I mean, I came in, I was a basketball player. And talked to some of the students about this. I was pretty good. There was a guy named Magic Johnson was a player. The same time I was in Michigan. My dad, business, moved to Maryland last 3 years of high school. And you know how parents are. My parents would be all mad. He's getting all the publicity. I'm like, Mom and Dad, he's pretty good, you know. And my visions of the NBA kind of faded away as I played against Magic Johnson, who dunked over me like I wasn't even there, you know. And but I was still pretty good. I was still all-state, you know, but I was nowhere near it. So Magic Johnson was going to Michigan State. I got a full ride basketball at University of Michigan, and my sister had gone there. My brother got his PhD there, or something. But I wasn't sold on it. And then a guy named Coach K came to my house on my last recruiting visit. I went to West Point and just fell in love with it. I didn't know what it was when I went, but he was very passionate about it, being a West Point graduate himself. And so I visited. I remember there was a poster. It had MacArthur, Patton, Eisenhower, and it said, at West Point, much of the history we teach was made by those we taught. And I thought, that's really cool. And just this idea of selfless service to a cause greater than self incredibly rewarding, and it just struck me at that point. So I went to play basketball, but also, you know, that selfless service, and I was going to get out in a few years. But the people in the Army are so amazing, and I was so proud to serve. Good Lord, that was 42 years I ended up serving, if you count the 4 at West Point, and I never thought in a million years I would do that, but I'm so proud of that because the people are what's amazing. So thank you again for being here, those who aren't in the service and haven't had that opportunity. And I guarantee you, please talk to these young folks, talk to the veterans, and you'll see it's amazing, and they need your support. They really need your support. Nothing big, just your support, because it's tough times and it can be difficult. Selfless service to a cause greater than self. It's one of the keys that makes us unique among nations, I would tell you. It's truly America at its best, this selfless service. Unique among militaries around the world. We don't think about this often, but it's very unique. We don't swear an oath to a king, to a queen, to a dictator, to an individual, a tribe, a religion. We all take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. An oath to the Constitution, which is very different. Our great allies, our closest allies, take an oath to a king, a queen. It's different. We're different, and it's something, regardless of the price, the personal price, willing to sacrifice all, willing to die to pass on the freedom to the next generation. And it's when you look at it, that's why these gentlemen served in Vietnam. They didn't want to go. It's not that they said, I want to go. Nobody wants to go to war. You'd have to be crazy. But that oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, selfless service, a cause greater than self. And look at the selfless service of so many in our nation's history. It's something, again, we don't think about a lot. It's just, different. We're so busy with all things. But just a few. The signers of the Constitution, as an example. 5 signers were captured by the British as traitors and tortured before they died. 12 had their homes ransacked and burned. 2 lost their sons in the Revolutionary Army. Another had 2 sons captured. 9 of the 56 who fought and died from wounds or hardships of the Revolutionary War. Fought and died of wounds or hardships. 9 of the 56. Incredible selfless service to give this experiment at the time of democracy a chance. And that is continued, and it makes us unique. Gerald Ford made a statement at the bicentennial. And you would think, Gerald Ford, why did I pick Gerald Ford? But it's an amazing statement and really just incredible. He said, independence has to be defended as well as declared. Freedom is always worth fighting for, and liberty ultimately belongs to those willing to suffer for it. And sadly, that is true. It takes that effort and that suffering to have true freedom. And the good news is these folks are so dedicated. Most Americans don't know it, take it for granted, and it's just the way it is. And that's a good thing, I think. They shouldn't be worried about their freedom. They shouldn't be worried about all those. They should let, the military and the right folks should protect and should do that. But it is good if they're aware of what's going on. So I don't want them worried about it, but it would be nice to know so that they can assist in many ways. And as I look at it, I picked 2 examples, older examples, World War II and Korea, but folks one from Kansas City, Missouri, and one from Kansas. It's on your table. There's 2 forms, if you want a chance to look at it. One of them, Staff Sergeant Herbert Hoover Burr, drafted into the Army, didn't volunteer, but drafted, World War II. Kind of amazing what Sergeant Burr did. He was in a tank in Germany in 1945, and they were in a big battle, and they got hit by an anti-tank missile that knocked the rest of the crew out. It deafened Sergeant Burr. He couldn't hear a thing, but the gunner, the driver, they were taken out, knocked out. And Sergeant Burr, so what did he do? Kind of like your instinct would be, run the hell away from there. You just got hit by a missile and save yourself or whatever. Not Sergeant Burr. He jumps in the driver's seat to accomplish the mission. He goes around the corner, and he surprised the Germans so much, even though they outgunned him like 4-1. He ran over one vehicle, ran over another, all by himself, in this tank. And then after he surprised the heck out of all these and defeated them, he came back and went through hails of bullet fire from the dismounts that were still out there, Germans, to help the wounded. Sergeant Burr. He would come back to Missouri, and he'd survive. Lived the Medal of Honor, very humble, never talked about it. But that's the type of individual, unbelievable, selfless service for a cause greater than self. And in that case, if he hadn't done what he'd done and all the others, we'd be speaking German right now, right? I mean, it's unbelievable. You look at what he did. The next one, and he's at your table as well, and you can look at it when you get time, I would encourage you, is an amazing story, Korean War. Chaplain Emil Kapan. Some of you have probably heard of Chaplain Kapan. Unbelievable. So he was in World War II as a chaplain, and then was in Korean War after World War II. Volunteered, and he was with the first unit that went over. And the North Koreans were pushing south in a surprise attack, and by the time they got over there. But, Chaplain Kapan, it's interesting, a statement from the Sec Army, Secretary McHugh. Chris worked for him. He said, among the recipients of the Medal of Honor, Father Kapan's story is in itself wholly unique, wholly different. He didn't charge a pillbox. He didn't defeat an enemy battalion or brigade or division by himself. Rather, Father Kapan, his only weapons were his steely defiance that inspired his fellow prisoners of war, the words he spoke, which brought comfort to the soldiers with whom he served, and a simple piece of purple ribbon that he wore around his neck, a mark of his chaplaincy, his priesthood. But don't make any mistake about it, Father Kapan was a soldier, and a soldier in the purest, in the truest sense of the word. Unbelievable. He was there as they were being overrun and could have saved himself, as 99.9% of people would. It's kind of instinctive. Just go the other way, get out of there. He stayed with the wounded. And as they were overrun, one Chinese soldier was about to kill a wounded soldier, and Father Kapan saw this, went over, pushed the Chinese soldier away, and helped the wounded individual. And the wounded individual interviewed him later. He said he thought they were both dead at that point. The Chinese soldier was going to shoot them both. He didn't. And he went with these wounded to a terrible, horrible prisoner of war camp in North Korea. It was unbelievable. I mean, his punishment, they would put him outside in 10 below in the winter in Korea, naked outside as punishment, because what he was doing, he was going out at night, gathering food he could. He'd sneak out, bring it back for everybody else. He was having services. He had an Easter service. He kept the morale. There's at least a dozen prisoners that lived that said they would not have lived without Chaplain Kapan. He was amazing. Finally, sadly, eventually he was moved to a hospital in the camp, which was essentially just where you go to die. And sadly, he died from all the harsh treatment they gave him. But as he's leaving, he's telling his fellow prisoners, don't worry. I'm going to a better place, and I'll be there before you, and I'll be praying for you. And they buried him, and the miracle, it's just a miracle. They thought he was buried in a mass grave. Later, they went back and found out that he actually was moved as an unknown soldier to a cemetery, Punch Bowl Cemetery in Hawaii. They exhumed the remains using DNA and found Chaplain Kapan, and he's relocated and moved him to Kansas. And it's quite an amazing sight. He's up for sainthood from the Pope. It's amazing. So you get a chance on your table there. But selfless service to a cause greater than self. I don't think you can get better examples, and certainly Chaplain Kapan, again, from Kansas City. Amazing individual. Just unbelievable. So now we're in some challenging times. And I'm going to open up for questions for you. And again, Chris mentioned my experience, 30 years dealing with China, and about 18 years in the Pacific and assignments. So kind of an oddball in the Army, a Pacific guy. Most were European. I was over in Germany too, in Europe, as deputy NATO commander. But I had a lot of time in the Pacific. And I would just tell you, I'd love to. We'll talk about that, but we're in the middle of perhaps the most dangerous time in history, and I don't want to be a downer. I wish I could tell you otherwise. In fact, I would tell you, for those of us who served, you serve, and my goal is always make it a safer world for my 3 daughters and my 7 grandchildren. That I'd serve and know that it's going to be a better world. In many ways, we tried, but man, I almost feel like we failed but in some ways also, it's kind of amazing because you would think mankind would get smarter, right? That, people would understand how ridiculous war is and how cruel, but unfortunately, power corrupts, right? And ultimate power corrupts ultimately. And now we're seeing like Russia's illegal, terrible invasion of Ukraine. What a horrible thing in the 21st century. Can you believe it? It's just, it almost, and China, probably the worst thing that could possibly happen, China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran working together, forming this axis of evil, if you will. They want to change the international rules-based order that's existed since World War II. After we defeated Germany and Japan, there's been a world order. And it's fascinating because no one has benefited more from that international rules-based order than China. They've grown economically like you can't imagine from that. Yet they want to change it. Why? Well, they don't want it equal for all nations. They don't want they want to have the advantage, and they you can read their strategy, and they want to become dominant in the world again, and the actions they're doing. And when I say they, it's interesting because, again, having been to China many times, and Chinese people are wonderful. I love them. They're wonderful, wonderful people. It's the Chinese Communist Party is evil. They're evil. I'm going to tell you. I just give you story after story. I was very fortunate we got to do the annual exercise, the largest exercise, the only exercise the U.S. does with China every year. It's a humanitarian assistance disaster response. We go to China. We would go to China one year, and then they would come to the United States. And it'd be, a hurricane, tsunami, flooding. But boy, you learned a lot when you went and saw and dealt with on a frequent basis, and it was absolutely amazing. So it's a dangerous time. North Korea already sent 10,000 soldiers to Ukraine to fight. Holy smokes. They were tragically slaughtered, but life is so miserable in North Korea. I think they actually probably liked being in Ukraine because it's so miserable in North Korea. They're sending 30,000 more. And how scary is that? This cooperation is a terrible, terrible thing. So it's a very tough time, and I would say really you look back, the only time you can find that's similar to this is right before World War II, and these things, they are working hard. Their biggest enemy is freedom. Their biggest enemy is freedom, and so it's a challenging time. There's all these challenges in the world. We need the best and the brightest serving, and that selfless serving, and that will take all of your help. We have a challenge in that, quite honestly. The Army in particular, I love the Army, but the Army's lousy at telling our story. It's kind of from the first time you come in, you're kind of taught, do a tough mission, don't talk about it, go on to the next tough mission. Don't brag, don't be a braggadocious, just move on to the next tough mission. Which is, good in a way, but bad in a way. People don't know all that the Army does, and the American public has no idea. Again, that's why I applaud Kansas City. You're reaching out, but that is unusual. I've been stationed all over, and that's unusual. We've got to connect with America and let them understand and know what the military does and what the Army in particular does. Absolutely critical, for our security and our future. And when you look, I will be honest. I thought, quite a few years ago, but you're getting old when you start to think, the next generation isn't as good, right? You're like, and then examples I'd use, I was, when I was a battalion adjutant. Has anybody in here been a battalion adjutant? Yeah, okay, we got some hands. We'll have a little session at the bar afterwards. It's not fun, it's a tough job, it's an adjutant job. But I remember, one of the things was, you would not leave before the commander. I mean, you wouldn't do it. I'd rather be shot than leave before the commander. You're the adjutant. You don't leave. In fact, my wife was having our first child. I was at Fort Carson, 4th Infantry Division, adjutant. And she had to go all the way up to the Air Force Academy. And I remember I got a call from her. Her water broke. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm the adjutant. I can't really leave. What do I do? And I went in to see a Major George Casey. He would later be General George Casey, but he was the XO. I said, sir, my wife's water broke. I'm the adjutant. He goes, get the hell out of here, Brown. What the hell are you doing? Get out of here. And, so I'm rushing to get to the hospital, and my in-laws were there taking her, and I met her, and I was there. So, like an idiot. But I didn't want to leave as the adjutant. Yeah. Oh, boy, I don't think I'd applaud that. She wasn't exactly thrilled with that, I can tell you. But anyway, I was there. And so, okay, fast forward when I'm a commander, and, I tried to get out at a reasonable hour, but one time I'm working kind of late, and I look out, the adjutant's gone. I'm like, what the hell? Where's the adjutant? Didn't even tell me he was leaving, just left, had something to do. And I'm like, boy, this is a different generation. What's going on here? They don't have the same, Well, later in combat, oh my gosh, amazing young men and women. It just makes me, I just like, oh, they're amazing. They're unbelievable. The selfless service, you can't even describe. It's just amazing. And the sacrifice. And so, yeah, they're different, definitely. I think they're smarter. No doubt they're smarter than us, being with the CGSC and SAMs. They're way smarter than we were, more dedicated than we were. And they have their priorities right. They want to be with their families more, and, sometimes you would work too hard. They're very smart. But as you look at it, it is a major change in our society, that it's not things right now. There's not a whole lot of folks out there that say, what do you want to do? I want to go in the service and selflessly serve my country. No, if you ask, as I go around with young people, I was at Leavenworth High School and JRT, OTC, they were phenomenal, these kids, unbelievable. It made me feel really good. They all want to serve, they're going SEALs, academies, unbelievable. But then other kids you talk to, what do they want to do? They want to be influencers. And at first I'm like, what the hell's an influencer? I'm still not sure what an influencer is. I don't think they're sure either. They influence people, right? And they make all this money. And they think, most think money is happiness. And it's like, no, you don't want to be dirt poor, but some of the most screwed up people have the most money, am I right? So money is not happiness. And, so selfless service to a cause greater, but we got to get the word out better. We got to tell the story, what's done. We got to connect with America better, and that's where you all can help. You're going to solve it. The bankers, the businesses that understand this and help. It's not for everybody. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but there are folks it is for, and help us with that. It would be great. It's also fascinating to me. You would think the internet. I don't know. I thought the internet. Mark and I were talking about this on the way down here. I thought the internet would be the death of a North Korea, of a Russia, because people would, they couldn't stop it. They'd see the truth. When in reality, what's happened? It's been a benefit to authoritarian regimes because they can shut down the country. I mean, you Google freedom in China, you Google democracy, it doesn't come up. They shut down the nation, and then they can feed them, like Russia's doing, any story they want. That actually Ukraine invaded them. I mean, it's insane things. You think, who would believe that? But they're pretty persuasive, and they believe it. And now you have this, the internet has actually caused more problems, and the internet has been a disadvantage for democracies because we don't control, the news like that. We allow folks. So now the challenge is, what is the truth, right? You get something, and, the old, well, I saw it on the internet, it must be true. We all know that's how. So you get this. It's fascinating, and unfortunately, it's helping authoritarian regimes and these folks that hate freedom and want to do us harm and want to have all the control. So some challenges there. I do think as we look, the Army, to kind of give an update. So why do we need a strong Army? I'm not sure I need to explain much more than what I've covered, but no one wants to go to war, and the best way to avoid war is to be so strong that no one would be foolish enough to test you. And unfortunately today, which you would think, again, people would get smarter, but when you're weak, you got a problem. They're going to take advantage of it, and especially this coalition, this axis of evil, is going to big time take advantage of it. And so we really need your help. The Army's op-tempo, the pace they're at is higher than ever. And it fascinated me. I thought we were in 2 wars. I thought the pace was pretty fast. But what's happened is, the whole world is moving faster, right? The fog of war, what we would call the fog of war when I was in CGSC, like these students were, was not enough information. It was pretty easy to have initiative because you got 2 or 3 pieces of info. Nobody really knew. Do something, do anything, Lieutenant. Nobody's going to second guess you. What's the fog of war today? Anybody? Too much information. How many emails do you get? How much? Oh my God, it's the hardest thing. Now we do have artificial intelligence now to help us weed through it all, but we all know that's not perfect. It's getting there, it helps, but my God, you're overwhelmed with information. And that causes massive problems. And so you see this op-tempo because there's it used to be something out of the blue that would happen was kind of rare. And we'd almost fault ourselves when we didn't figure it out. Today, that's the norm, something out of the blue. My gosh, a tweet can be national policy, and things move so rapidly that you can have a rumor that causes some action within minutes, and it's happening everywhere. So it causes this fast op-tempo of the things you have to do and other things you have to react to, or if you don't, you have issues. They're increased, something's going on. I'm not going to say it's climate change. I don't know what the heck it is, but there's more disasters. I don't think it's that we're finding out. Let's face it, there's more wildfires, tornadoes, disasters, hurricanes than ever before. And of course, humanitarian assistance, disaster response, a huge mission for the Army and the National Guard, first ones there. And they are working their butts off in that. We all know they're even involved in border security, homeland defense. Homeland defense, critical, and border security, but busy as can be in that. The Army's has to transform and change because they're still using the same equipment I used 40 years ago. Now there's different versions of it, like we're on version 25 or whatever, of the same thing, but they need capabilities like counter drone and all these things they need, that these new things that are happening, rapidly changing. The nature of war has not changed. War's a terrible thing. It's political. It's but the character of war is changing like crazy, and how it's executed and so forth. So you have to keep up with that, or sadly, as has happened before to us, we will lose lives in the first battles. As you look back at first battles, we've lost a lot of lives, learned a lot, but lost a lot of lives. And shame on us if we don't take advantage of all we have today and avoid war completely by being so ready again that nobody would be foolish. They're really working on delivering the right warfighting capabilities, optimizing the force structure. And yes, the military gets a huge budget. And yes, I wish more of it could go to education, more of it could go to state. I wish it could be. But the reality is it's kind of the old, what's first? You need security. And a lot of us have seen in other countries if you don't have security, it's kind of hard to do the other stuff because that's a primary. You got to secure your country and be ready to, God forbid, if you have to fight, win. Second place is not a good choice. So we have right now 174,000 soldiers assigned to combatant commands that do the fighting across 140 countries. And that's over half of the requirements of the combatant commanders. That's the Army alone. 140 countries. Again, most Americans have no idea. What are they doing in those 140 countries? They're helping allies and partners build so that they can do more, we do less. They're in places like Poland and Lithuania. So Putin doesn't say, I'll just go over there, although he just fired drones into Poland. Interesting. I think it was yesterday, and NATO shot some of those down. Unbelievable. They're out there preserving the peace and building to prevent conflict. And God forbid if it happens, we can work together and win and stop some of these authoritarian regimes that who knows what they would do. Building allies and partners, that's our advantage. It's an advantage we have over that axis of evil. It's not a tight, they still have a lot of differences, Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran, but They're working together enough to be dangerous. Now, fortunately, our advantage is we have amazing allies and amazing partners that work closely together. And one of our foreign area officers in CGSC is shaking his head, yes, because he understands, it's a huge advantage we have from allies and partners all over the world who want, again, freedom and and great things happening like budgets being increased in NATO and stuff like that, they realize they can't rely on us completely. Everybody's got to chip in, and we'll do it. So I believe really, I had a few more things, but what I want to do now is just for time is open it up for questions. A lot of you, I know I was talking to you beforehand, had specific questions. So instead of me, generals have no problem talking, right? So I don't want to just sit up here and talk. I want to really answer your questions, what you have. So let me open it up to the floor for any questions you have on anything going on, etc. I wouldn't clap yet. I haven't answered the questions. I might do a lousy job at the questions. You never know.
Sure. Hey, sir, thanks for your time, both earlier today with the students and here. Early in your remarks, you mentioned that you were trained and educated, led by the Vietnam era veterans. And then, of course, you led global war on terrorism era soldiers. So what lessons did you learn from the Vietnam leaders?
Oh, wow, great question.
And those lessons from those that you led that you might impart on the students and the future leaders?
That's why he's the director of the School of Advanced Military Studies. These are the top-notch, and he's the director being a top-notch, unbelievable. Great question. I will tell you, my platoon sergeant was a Vietnam veteran, Dwight Anderson. He was a Marine in Vietnam, came back in the Army. Dwight Anderson, amazing. He retired as sergeant major, and then when he was retired, he ran Normandy, the cemetery at Normandy, for the Battle Monuments Commission for about 10 years. But it would take us 2 hours. What I learned from, it was amazing to me. Go with your instincts was one thing. He would say, go with your instincts. I'm like, well, and just watching him, the way he would understand tactically and what he had learned. And then, just fascinating, his passion for tough, demanding, realistic training. Because he knew, and the criteria that he taught me that I used for 38 years, you're responsible, America's sons and daughters. Having my own daughter's a lieutenant colonel, my oldest, as I said, and she's deployed a couple times. And I can tell you, that's difficult. Like, when I deploy, my wife's kind of like, yeah, that's what you do, but when my daughter deployed, both of us are like, holy smokes, this is my daughter, and she was out on patrol, she was doing all kinds of crazy stuff. I wish she wasn't. And I wish I didn't know all I knew, too. I was actually a one-star in Iraq. Same time she was the captain, doing stuff on the Syrian border, stopping all this stuff. And I would tell her, I'd send her a note, look, I know what you're doing. Send me a note. Send me something when you're back from the patrol. Because I'm worried, She wouldn't. So all night I'm up. Oh, my God, I didn't hear from her. I'm busy as can be, but I'm like, this is my daughter, And then the next morning, I'd say, hey, are you okay? Yeah. Why didn't you send me a note? Come on. They never listen to their parents, right? So it's tough. So I learned, you have to be able to look the parents of those young men and women you're in charge of in the eye and say, I have done everything I can do for your son or daughter. And we're going to do everything we can, but I have done everything we can do in training. And he was so passionate about hard training because it'll save lives. He'd seen lives lost. And there's nothing worse than that when you see it. The first time I lost a soldier in combat, I told some of I think it was Sam's class today, I was at the memorial and I felt like I was having a heart attack, to be quite honest. I just had this pain like I've never experienced. Similar, smaller pain when my father passed away. He was my hero, but nothing like that pain of that soldier. And, so he prepared me for the, tough, demanding, realistic training, doing all you can do, and the lessons. And then the heroes from Vietnam who, did their job, served their nation, and then the way they were treated. And if somebody had said to me, I was kind of preparing for us to have to go through that. We were 20 years at war, in Afghanistan and Iraq, I thought this is going to happen to us. And it's a real tribute to the American people, and I think a lot of work by a lot of folks to understand it's not the soldiers who decide to go to war. You'd have to be crazy to choose to go to war. But it's your duty. But it's important to depend on the Constitution of the United States, and your country sends you to war, and you do the best you can. Don't blame them. So if anybody had told me 20 years later in Iraq and Afghanistan that people would still be saying thank you for your service to soldiers, I'd say they're crazy. It's going to fade. It didn't. So, good on folks that understood that, and we've educated. Now, I'm a little worried. Some of these things we're using, so, potentially National Guard in cities. You could have an incident where they're not trained for some things, and they could accidentally, have an incident. They shoot somebody, and then does your, like Kent State, remember that a long time, does your reputation, does it go down? That's kind of tough, so I do worry about that. But I can't tell you, learned a ton. And I think it's the same today. We were talking about a little bit with the students. Some people want to just say, Iraq and Afghanistan, just forget all that. No. There were a lot of lessons to learn that will save lives later and prevent war if we do it right. Some don't apply, but some do, the way the world is today. So thanks for that question. I think, yeah.
Over here on this side.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Good evening, General. Lieutenant Colonel Drew Betts. I'm the commander of the United States Army Recruiting Battalion.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank
Very
you, sir.
tough job.
I'll tell you what.
I know Johnny Davis, your boss. And he's,
the civil-military divide is definitely real.
yeah.
Sir, thank you so much. And thank you so much for what you do for advocating for the United States Army in your position as AUSA.
Yeah, it's my
And
honor.
That
Really
ties to my
feel proud.
question. So as you're advocating for us, I'm interested in your perspective of where the Army is. Are we the Army of 1919, 1938, 1974, or 1993?
Whew, tough question.
And
Man.
as you think about,
Did you go to Sam's as well?
sadly I did not. Well, we'll see. We'll see later on.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
sir. Yeah, son of a Sam's grad.
Yeah.
So apple doesn't fall far.
Yeah,
But
I would
as
say-
you advocate for us, where do you see the Army?
Yeah,
and
that's a
how
good,
do we get better?
good question. Not in the category of 1919, 1938. We're talking about like pre-World War II. Holy smokes, we had, I think it was 400,000 in the Army, and we grew to 8 million. Marshall and what they did. We're not in that category, no way. I'd say closer to 93. We're not in, fortunately, I was around 77 and saw post-Vietnam, as a very young cadet, but I saw it, and again, I had the greatest respect, unbelievable respect for Vietnam veterans and the way they were treated, but we had a whole generation that worked then to rebuild the Army, the Starries, here at Leavenworth mostly, that rebuilt the professionalism, rebuilt the schools for non-commissioned officers, things that had slipped, no fault of the veterans, but lack of funding, lack of this, lack of that after Vietnam, people tired of war, etc. So, watching that, I'd say we're closer to 93, but we're at a point where we're really at is, this is going to date me, but like air-land battle was the doctrine post-Vietnam that was created, started in the late 70s, early 80s. It took about 20 years, actually, working it, but it led to incredible victory in Desert Shield, Desert Storm. It led to us being the best military in the world, that air-land doctrine, air-land battle. And it was unbelievable, led by the Army. And I was a young company commander getting to implement that and see it and live it. And it was an intellectual change. There was change in how we educated. There was changes in how we trained. Training, huge changes. Changes in equipment. That was the last time we got newer equipment and stuff. So I'd say we're closer to that because we're at that point. The future now is airland battle. Unfortunately, China has watched us for 20 years. It's like say a football team, and they know you're going to run a wishbone running game, so they shut that down. They know our playbook, and they thought they would shut us down. The things they're doing with anti-access aerial denial that they put a lot of money into to defeat us. The good news for us is we're not doing that anymore. And we have multi-domain operations, all domain operations, presenting them multiple dilemmas, things they can't even imagine. And we have the quality soldiers and leaders where we can empower them. I was just, again, talking to this earlier today. A sergeant in the Chinese Army does what, a sergeant in the U.S. Army does what a colonel in the Chinese Army does. A sergeant in the E5 sergeant does what a colonel in the Chinese Army does. They cannot empower, thank goodness. We empower like crazy. Russia's in a similar boat. If you remember the invasion of Ukraine, and early on they were like stationary, and everybody's like, why are they sitting there on the road? What the hell's going on? What are they, idiots? They're just sitting there, and Ukrainians are individually, defeating them, thank God. They didn't trust their 2-star division commanders and below to tell them what was going on. Total lack of trust. And so the 2-star commanders, when they're invaded, they thought they were on a training exercise. They didn't even know they were going to war. Can you imagine that? They don't trust them at all. And that's a terrible thing for those soldiers. I mean, it's a good thing that they weren't successful, that's for sure. But unbelievable and lack of trust. We trust a private with a month in the Army more than they trust their 2-star general. So it's a difference. And we have incredible experience, incredible talent, and we can empower, and we do it. And we're a learning organization. So we're in pretty good shape, but we do have issues with, sometimes we can't innovate as fast as we'd like because of rules and regulations and from Congress, from our own internal, you name it. There's all these, innovation is stifled. I was an innovator for 38 years. I'm going to tell you, it wore me out, like fighting the bureaucracy constantly to innovate, bring new things in. It wears you out. You can make it happen, but man, it's a lot of work. And so we got to get better at that. That's the challenge. And then we also need, now the recruiting's good, but can we sustain that? And will this generation step up anywhere near the greatest generation that I was talking about earlier that saved the world from evil? If we get to that point that these authoritarian regimes come together and do something really stupid, which, part of me, I don't doubt. I would have thought they'd never invade Ukraine. Wrong. So, can we be? I think that's a point we're at. So I'd say 93 of those. A couple other questions. Yeah. Or as many as you. I'm staying as long as you like. You probably don't want me to stay that long. Yes.
General Brown, what should Japan do, or what are they doing to help work with the United States and their allies to help blunt the Chinese?
Japan's doing a ton. The Japanese ground self-defense forces I've worked with for 30 years as well. Now, they have a challenge empowering. It's just not in their culture. If you look, Japanese businesses, if you got them, I remember I think it was Nissan, they got them together, give ideas to the bosses, they couldn't do it. God forbid they should know something more than the, so they have a problem in their culture empowering. But they're getting much better at it, they get it. When we were developing, as in the Pacific, and we're developing this multi-domain operations and working with PACOM as the way we could, deter China, and we're implementing it. Of course, I talked a lot to our close allies, the Japanese being one of them, and they actually had some advantages over us. They already had things like artillery from the land that could sink a ship. We didn't have that. I had to ask the PACOM commander to get us that. We have it now. But they already were doing some multi-domain stuff because there are Ryukyu Islands that are so vulnerable. That's the only way they could protect them. But the game changed quite a bit when... sorry, I'm talking too long. They're leaving. Anyway, the game changed, not the game, but the situation changed quite a bit when suddenly North Korea could reach China with missiles. Obviously, China always could, but North Korea with that capability. And the Japanese really stepped up their amount of money put into defense, their efforts in defense, their systems, their equipment, they're working with. So I just have watched over the years, we used to do exercise and it would be the Japanese working over here, the U.S. over here, they just couldn't keep up. Now it's like this, and it's really good, and they're a really strong ally. And the only question I would have is, given their position in the world, if they were bombarded, badly, would the public continue to support it? Would they say, no, give up, would they, that's the only question I think they would, but I know the military wouldn't. The military is really good, and they'd work hard to protect them and stuff. And obviously, they need more, the same thing we need, counter drone, air defense, counter, missile stuff. So, yeah, but they're a very good military, getting better and better. And they understand they have to work closely with us. And there are some historical tensions between Japan and South Korea that the military, there's no tension. We work together. And we always walk the tightrope of the politicians. No, you can't do this. They need to work together. The politicians didn't want them to. So that's kind of a tightrope and tough to work. But you can get them working together, and that's key. That's our advantage. Yeah. Thanks. Good question. There's a other. Yeah, back there, behind you.
Hi, General Brown. Thank you for your service, first of all.
Oh, it's my honor. Yeah.
I just wanted to ask kind of two questions ago. With all the changes, with whether it's AI or just like the attitude towards conflict, how do you see our generation, 'cause I'm part of that generation, how do you see the military adapting while like keeping the core values, and also what needs to be done to bring that back?
Yeah,
Thank
great.
you.
Well, your generation's key. You're digital natives. You grew up with it. You get it. One of my granddaughters is 5. She can do more on an iPhone than I'll ever be able to do my entire life, easily. I'm a digital immigrant. I didn't grow up, but you all are so good at understanding how to leverage systems and apps and artificial intelligence and machine learning. What it will do for the military is help us make decisions faster. An example, when we were in crisis with Korea a few years ago, and I think it was 2017, and it came very close to war. I was commanding the Army in the Pacific, responsible for forces in Korea, the whole Pacific, about 120,000. And, that gets your attention. You're responsible for it. You might have to go to war. And we were leveraging ideas like, so for example, building what we would call a target. There's something in Korea where they want to harm us and we want to stop it. It used to take a year with old systems, and we would leverage AI and do it in a day. So that's really good. You can stop them, and they know it. Then that deters them, and you never end up going. And I am convinced the things we did in that made them back down and realize they'd lose. So that's a great question. We have to empower, and we do that. Do you ever do it enough? I don't know. I think we're doing it pretty well, but maybe never as much as you could. But really empower these young folks to have ideas of how they can do things better, faster, that will help us. The key will be making the decision faster than those that would do you harm, and you'll stay ahead of them, as opposed to like Russia I talked about. They're making no decisions. They're not empowered. They're slow as molasses. Thankfully, they got their butts kicked by Ukraine there initially. All their big plans thought they'd walk over them in a day or two, and they were wrong, because they weren't empowering. They weren't looking at new ways to do things. They have since adapted pretty damn well, unfortunately. But they have a ways to go. So yes, you are the ideas. You're the future, and you will, in all the services, in every capability. Same, I would say, in business. If you're in business, you're foolish if you don't take the ideas of the young folks that understand how to leverage these capabilities and be faster than your opponent in business, and have an advantage, no doubt. Any other questions? Yeah. All the way you came from Omaha, am I correct?
Well, I was born in Arkansas. I don't know if that counts. I live here in Kansas City.
Oh, okay.
Is this on?
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, I'd like to bring it up to today with Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
With your experience and knowing that probably about the 1994 Budapest Memorandum that Russia promised to protect Ukraine when they gave up their nuclear weapons.
Right.
The United States and Great Britain as well.
Right.
And Russia obviously broke their vow.
Right.
Or did they? In 2008, President Putin was talking, Bush was president, and was at a NATO meeting and said he was concerned about Ukraine becoming a member of NATO because they were invited to potentially get in there.
Right.
And he's concerned about national security, just like Ukraine is concerned about national security.
Right.
And the European countries are concerned about it.
Yeah.
I mean, we all are.
Yeah.
And he's asking a question. Why can't we answer his question? He wants a statement saying that Ukraine would not become a member of NATO.
Yeah.
He wants that in writing and signed.
Right.
Why hasn't that been offered? If that's something that might get the armies to be withdrawn and have peace. Is that possible? That they could go ahead and have a statement out that maybe the NATO members or one of the NATO or the whatever could go ahead and sign a statement that he's asking for. Thank you.
Yeah, you kind of, obviously, you're getting into areas outside the military lane. I mean, I can give you my opinion, but, it's very important the military stay apolitical and nonpartisan. And that's fundamental. It's absolutely critical. And so, my opinion, I don't think it would have mattered, because you can't trust Putin. How many times has he gone against thousands, not done what he said anyway? So I don't think it would have mattered if they'd have done that. And regardless, that is no reason to illegally invade and brutally kill so many innocent people and continue to purposely target civilians, children, schools, hospitals. And of course, their story on the internet is, oh, well, no, we don't, we haven't. Yeah, they are. I guarantee you, they are targeting, and it's brutal. It's again, you just think mankind would not be that, brutal to each other, and they would learn. So, that's my opinion, but that I would let the decision makers and those work that. And I'm sure you get some people say, well, maybe we should have done that, but I still don't think it would have stopped. I think, my opinion, Putin is all about Russians are successful when they gain territory, and he wanted that territory back, and he would have done it no matter what we'd have done. He'd have found some excuse, some reason. And it's pretty ridiculous, the reasons they've come up with and stuff. It's amazing that, again, you look, the internet can control these. He can control what people see and think, and it just is unbelievable. And I think of the, oh my God, really thousands and thousands of Russian soldiers that have been killed in this. Where are the mothers? And, rising up and saying, what is going on? And the families, and, how do they tamp them down? It's kind of scary, no doubt. So, yeah, I'm not trying to avoid your question, but that's just my opinion. But as a military person, I wouldn't, that's not my lane. That's policy and different things. Again, we don't, military doesn't send us to war, doesn't, make those decisions. We stay in our lane and support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And you do what you're told as long as it's a legal order, So, but it's a good question. Yeah. Thanks. Okay, I think any other? No, well, hey, thanks. Really, again, thank you for being here, and thanks for your interest in the military and supporting the military. And I just tell you that, we're grateful for that support. And if you get a chance, do yourself a favor. I'm going back after being with those JROTC cadets and the CGSC students and SAM students, feeling a hell of a lot better. And we're going to go back and say, man, we're in good shape. And the instructors, I would add, a lot of instructors here who are amazing people, working hard to be the best instructors on the face of the earth and doing a great job. And so, yeah. So, thank you for joining us, and hope to see you again here soon. Yeah.